this video, I will be performing and talking about Bach's Partita in E major for solo violin. I'll be performing on a Baroque violin. This one was made by General Vernaccia in Naples in 1755 and has pure gut strings. I don't use a chin rest or a shoulder rest. These were inventions of the 19th and 20th century. And I will be playing with a Baroque bow weighing 48 grams, of a type that would have been familiar to Bach. This Baroque bow really comes into its own, particularly in the dance movements after the prelude, where the wide range of articulations and colour possible with a Baroque bow really help bring out the character of these dances. But firstly, a few words about the opening prelude. This is a virtuosic violin solo composed entirely of semiquavers. Looking at it on the page, especially in a modern edition, violinists today often think in terms of the brilliant moto perpetuo style of composition of the 19th century. Paganini's moto perpetuo, for example, is also entirely made of semiquavers, but it is an essentially different type of composition. The Paganini comprises florid and extremely brilliant passage work for the violin, with a flowing accompaniment that is rhythmically and harmonically predictable in order not to disturb the speed and swing of the virtuosic violin performance. In the Bach, however, the phrasing and harmonies, rather than being predictable and flowing, are complex and unpredictable, engaging the listener with a compelling array of rhythmic and harmonic effects on different levels simultaneously. There is so much going on under the surface that a performance promoting merely speed and flow only gives a two-dimensional representation of this piece and misses out entirely on the richness of Bach's composition. As well as my personal experience and study of the music, Joel Lester, Schroeder, David Ledbetter, and above all, Bach's own beautiful manuscript has been a rich source of inspiration for me over the years. Later, I will also be referring to books written by Bach's contemporaries, Walter, Matheson and others. Let's look at some specific musical examples in the prelude. What I like to think of as a kind of third dimension that adds richness and complexity to the piece. The larger scale phrasing dictated by the key changes or the two-bar phrases as indicated by the echoes is clear. But it is the imaginative rhythmic complexity that happens within these broad strokes that brings the continuous semiquaver patterns to life, or in other words, lets the music speak. The rest with which the piece starts creates a momentary ambiguity. Is the piece in 3 or 2? The listener is immediately drawn in, waiting for a clear sense of the beat to start. Within the bar, there is often an underlying saraband-like rhythm. That means the second beat is important. This arises when the harmonies regularly change on the second beat. For example, in bars 1 to 2, the quavers begin on beat 2. In bars 3 to 6, or 9 to 12, 29 to 30, a new chord member appears in the moving part on the second beat and remains till the end of the bar. Melodic high and low points, pattern beginnings and other accentuations tend to occur off the beats, creating interesting and unexpected patterns. In bar 3, the top note of the melody, A, is on the weakest part of the bar. In bar 29, each ascent begins on the weakest quaver of the beat and ends on the weakest semi-quaver of the beat. Looking at the score and listening to the wonderful reworking of this prelude that Bach wrote for organ with orchestra, BWV 29, is not only inspirational in terms of instrumentation and colour, but also sheds light on phrasing. For example, bars 7 to 8, which might superficially look like a bridge passage between the two larger sections, is actually orchestrated by Bach in exactly the same way as bars 1 to 2. And therefore it's clear that he intended it to be the true beginning of the next musical phrase. The same goes for bars 51, 55, 67 and 120. Every time I play this prelude, I notice more intricate details or intriguing patterns, and I hope that you too will enjoy unravelling the layers of detail in this amazing piece. I find I don't even really need to exaggerate all of this for the audience to already sense a new richness. The French Sun King Louis XIV gave dancing such a prominent role at court that from the mid-17th century onwards the ability to perform the mostly French dances became a social prerequisite in all the courts of Europe. That particular social norm has now completely disappeared provides us with a challenge when interpreting Baroque dance music. In order to find back the natural feel for the rhythms, speeds and emotions of the dances that Bach and his musicians would have taken for granted, we have to refer to contemporary writings that Bach himself would have been familiar with. For our purposes, Johann Gottfried Walther's Musikalisches Lexikon, published in 1732, is an excellent source. Walther and Bach were good friends and distantly related. Bach even acted as an agent for Walther, selling his lexicon in Leipzig. According to Walther, the Lohr is a piece or dance that should be played slowly and seriously, whereby the dotted first half of every half bar should be held long. Walther also often quotes from Johann Mattheson's book Das neu eröffnete Orchester, that was published in 1713 in Hamburg. Mattheson, a well-known music theorist and contemporary of Bach, describes the Lohr as a slow jig. It's also very helpful to get a sense of how the dances were actually danced, and for this I can recommend Tormod Dahlen's recent study Zum Tanzen und Spielen. According to Dahlen, in the Lohr, the dancers had to perform many small gestures within the context of the larger movements, whilst always maintaining the impression of serene elegance. To bring to life the refined French style of the Lohr, the French rhythmic concept of inégalité can help. Instead of playing the quavers or dotted rhythms straight, as written, you slightly swing them rather like a gentle jazz rhythm. The chords can also be arpeggiated sometimes, like a viola da gamba would play them. The gamba was extremely popular in France. And last but not least, the harmonies. Typically for Bach, the harmonies greatly heighten the emotional impact of the piece. A whole wide range of emotions, tenderness, pride, love, heartbreak, speak to us through the incredible harmonies of this one small dance. According to Walter, the characteristic features of a gavotte are the repeated 8-bar refrain and an upbeat consisting of 2 crotchets. This 2-crotchet upbeat he describes in German as im Aufheben, which literally means raising up, perfectly describing the movement a dancer would make on the upbeat. The next part of Walter's description seems rather confusing. Sometimes quickly, but sometimes also performed slowly. This, however, makes more sense when we take into consideration how the gavotte was danced. Tormod Dahlen's research reveals that, firstly, despite the quick tempo, the character of the gavotte must remain steady and sensible. Secondly, the tempo must always be more moderate than the bourrée. And thirdly, the accent always becomes at the beginning of the second whole bar. Bach, however, composed not just a gavotte here, but a gavotte en rondeau, whereby 4 distinctly characterful episodes intersperse the charming and ever-returning gavotte theme. This simple but genial idea has caught the imagination of generations of violinists, making this one of the most popular pieces Bach ever wrote. Several of the episodes feature a drone. This refers not to the Scottish bagpipe, but to the musette de cour. This gentle, bellow-fed bagpipe had become very popular, especially in France in the early 18th century. Paintings by Watteau attest to its great popularity amongst aristocrats. Idyllic scenes of fêtes champêtres often featured the musette. The name menuet, says Walter, it comes from the agile and deft dance steps, for menuet means small. The time signature, he adds, is 3/4, but it is usually performed more like a piece in 3/8 time. This suggests to us that the tempo is more on the lively side than stately. In the Baroque, time signatures were often used to indicate tempo or mood. To summarize, Walter has indicated that the minuet should be deft, elegant, and not too slow. Also good to know, however, is that the dance steps only coincide with the music every second bar, hence the frequent tremiolas and 2-bar phrasing. The minuet was destined to become Louis XV's favourite dance and thenceforth the most popular dance in Europe. Its grace, elegance and noblesse stood the test of time, and right up until the early 19th century the minuet was still the absolute favourite opening dance of the ball. Walter describes the bourrée as a lusty dance from Auvergne, where, by the way, a folk variant still exists, or perhaps from Spain. The dance itself, according to Dahlen, features especially lively jumps and leaps, and the character is very burlesque. Bach establishes this character right from the start with the double stopping on the upbeats and the invitation to use an open E string in bars 1 and 2. After the elegant refinement of the ballroom and the minuet, this lusty bourrée seems to fling open the door to the outside world and let in a gust of country air. The Gigue provides a brilliant conclusion to the Partita. Walter describes it as a nimble English dance, and the choreography indeed features a series of very energetic leaps and jumps. Walter goes into some detail about the origin of the word Gigue. According to him, the word has two distinct sources. Firstly, Geige, the German word for violin, and secondly, an ancient German word, Giegen, which describes someone with a very awkward gait.